Cool. So now that I've given you an introduction to what groups are, what frames are, and the kinds of things that you can achieve with both, hopefully it starts to become clear which things you should be using more often and when. Still get asked the question, which one is better, or, when should I use either? And like, if you want a quick rule of thumb, always default to a frame. And there's a couple of reasons why. So even though groups do have their place, and they still behave much more like images would do when you scale things up and down, especially when you're working with presentation files, that might be a behavior you're more used to. That's still something you can replicate with a frame by setting the objects inside to a scale behavior, and B, text layers just don't behave in the same way. You may as well use the scale tool instead, and you can change the size of things. So those are the main reasons why you would actually use a frame over a group, and they do have a couple of use cases, but if you check through the article that I shared before, there's actually not the ability to use constraints in groups anymore. So that's something that used to be the case, and now that's gone. So in my opinion, they're a bit more of a legacy thing. And I think one of the other major, I'd say pitfalls, because it's not a major benefit, when a different designer or a different person is working in your Figma file, if I want to lengthen a frame, so for example, I might have an iOS screen or a mobile app screen that I'm working on, and I want to add an extra section. If I elongate that, for any groups that are inside, that's going to elongate the thing. So I'll give you a quick demo of that now just to show you. Cool, so here's an example of a mobile screen. Actually, let's give that let's give that a quick fill, just so it looks a bit more like a page. And what I've seen is that here you've got a nav bar, this group of stuff, and what I call just the footer. And what I've seen before is that this isn't the default actually, so it may not be a problem for you, but as designers work on a large file, and as they work together through a large problem, sometimes the constraints get set to scale by default for a group of stuff. Usually this will be icons or like groups of a couple of different things together. And what you'll see is that if I need to elongate the screen, this sort of thing happens, and that's really frustrating. So when you use a footer, it should definitely always be bottom, so don't worry, we'll go into those kinds of constraints later, but you'll see this sort of behavior, and that's not what we want. What we want is for it to just create some more space for us to work with when working on a design. So that pretty much summarizes my take on when you'd use a group, when you use a frame. Long story short, use frames. They're better.